Go.
Good evening and welcome to this session. I have, just as I was saying a little while ago, a panel of heavyweights, as we would call it in the boxing parlance, today talking on a very interesting topic, which is actually a culmination of two different worlds. On one side, we're talking about the risk of not digitizing, and on the other side, we're looking at it for and from the perspectives of what we call as essential legacy industries. We all understand and know that the modern economy, or what we call as the internet economy, companies are digital native companies. They thrive on the internet and digital. It comes very easy to them. But however, if we understand and believe that what we often hear about data being the new oil, I think it is, but I think logical to say that digitization is the drilling. I mean, without digitization, where is data? So without digitization, no data, no oil, no real movement in terms of what we're seeing as the shift towards modern economy. So what I want to do is I want to quickly introduce the panel to you all, and then start posing the question. We have about 40 odd minutes, and I really hope to sort of leave you all with a lot of information that you'll find very useful, and learning from gentlemen such as Professor Ramcharan, a renowned business advisor, author, and speaker, who most often speaks very passionately on the subject of digitization. So I don't think we could have a more qualified person on this panel today to speak on this subject. Having said that, I also want to introduce you Mr. Raj Vatakuti, technology visionary and acclaimed business leader. He runs Altimetric, where he's the executive chairman, which helps organize and accelerate business transformation. Raj, I'd also like to congratulate you on winning the Entrepreneur of the Year 2020 National Award recently. And finally, I'd like to introduce you to Suchet Davluri, who is the CEO of Newland Laboratories Limited, which is a leading manufacturer of active pharma ingredients and an end-to-end solution provider for the pharma industry's chemistry and chemical needs. So we do have a very, on one side, you see somebody like Professor Ram, who's, years of expertise and experience on the subject. Raj, who comes from a practitioner's perspective. His company, his whole legacy is built on technology vision. And of course, then there is Suchet, who comes from the industry side of things, and more specifically in industry about which we're really talking. The whole perspective is about essential legacy industries, right? So this is where we are, and this is the panel that I would like to get started with. Professor Ram, I would like to pose the first question to you. Honestly, I was tempted to start by asking you, because of COVID, have you finally, had to find a home, or are you still traveling? But I know that I'm short on time, so I will jump straight into the topic and ask you, when we talk about essential legacy industries, and then top of my mind, I could think of maybe companies in the oil and gas industries, companies like pharma companies, maybe chemical industries, etc., which are they really under the pressure of digitization? And if I could be presumptuous enough to, think that they are, then could I ask you, what are the risks of not digitizing for these essential legacy industry companies? What risks do they really run? I would love your views on this, sir.
Ravi, thank you very much. First, a great question. And I have a very short answer. Digitize or die. And those industries where the digital giants, born and native digital giants, have made their moves, and the legacy companies are not yet moving forward. Some of them are dying. We now have an evidence. In the retail industry in America, the companies are now in bankruptcy. In B2B, woke up, and this company moved ahead about 8 years ago, and they're doing very well. And they are And so the digitization is a very simple thing to understand. A very large world population is now consumption, is consuming digitization, smartphones, ordering, internet. So the society is digitally in the economy. And I think I need to explain something so basic many of the people have not understood. Digitization is a physical conversion of data into bits, one and zero. And the computing has become very cheap, access has become very cheap. Then we have software that carry the data. The key part is the artificial intelligence algorithms, machine learning. And they have been here for centuries. They are commoditized. They were invented long time ago. First one was invented in the 11th century. And they are available. Our high school student can download. The point is for all managers, leaders, that this is a set of tools. And then you can have outside people come and use those tools to build what you want to build. Just like we build a building, we get a contractor. You can do it internally in your company, or you get them, but you can then specify how your business is going to change. And I want us to have three items that are different before digitization became large scale, largely by Amazon, and later on Alibaba. And the first one is if you don't connect to the customer, you will die. Very simple. So COVID has really opened up those fissures. I had a call from a Asian company, very, very big, well-known brand, and the chairman personally called me up and he said, I'm stuck in New Delhi and that my merchandise is not moving because I'm not connecting to the customer. I want people to know that people like Raj, which they will hear from, they now put that together in 9 weeks operating in less than $500,000. Very happy. So the idea here is that the CEO, the managers, the leaders of the business must define that the first major change is the customer connect, customer data, customer engagement, customer satisfaction. And that was not there before. Number two is the speed of decision making. That has changed in a quantum way. And number three is fast response called agility. Your business must change. You change those three things, you cannot do that because in digitization, you treat each customer individually. I've come to call market of one. So
Right.
if you're using Amazon, you are a market of one. It's customized for you. You get recommendations. It cannot be done without it. So the whole thing about mass marketing, mass advertising has now changed 180 degrees. Short answer, get on with the digitization. It is not expensive. You can see results, good results, as Raj will take us through in less than 10 weeks. You have no choice.
That's very interesting that you put it as succinctly as you do, Professor Ram. In fact, I would like to invite Suchet to share his view. I mean, Suchet, you are at the helm of a pharma company, and that's an industry as as essential and as legacy as it gets, right? I mean, you can't drive both away from each other, and for industries such as yours. How important is digitization, right? And then what are some of the factors that people in your position should probably consider while they are embarking themselves on this shift, which, I have another question, I'll come to that later, but yeah, how do they sort of really embark on this shift?
Well, thanks, Ravi, for that question. After Ram has said either digitize or die, I don't think I can
You have a choice.
I can really go back and disagree with him. One, because he successfully brainwashed me by now. So I believe that if we don't digitize, we're gonna die. That's for sure. So I think my short answer is the same, Ravi. I think it's going to happen. You called it the oil. Uh, I was on a tour of Silicon Valley about a year ago for about 2 weeks, just visiting the Googles, the Ubers of the world, the PayPal, just to study them of how they've transformed and if there was any lessons to learn for Newland in that, right? So it's strange. You have the legacy pharmaceutical, these large reactors, chemicals, hazardous reactions, and then I was trying to correlate what's happening in Silicon Valley to how we could apply it. So I think you must do it. It is, the new electricity or the new oil. It doesn't matter what you call it. We won't be able to survive without it, which is pretty much what Ram said. I think in terms of what an organization like Newland should consider, I think it boils down to we're a B2B business, but as Ram said, it's going to boil down to how quickly we can make decisions and how agile we can be as an organization. We've seen this with COVID, right? And with COVID uh, hitting us, it's the companies that could quickly reallocate the resources, that could change the strategy, that could think about their future and adapt to it quickly, are the companies that are starting to emerge stronger than the others. And I think the answer to be able to do that lies in digitization. So I think if you're a company like me, I would put it down on a piece of paper. Is what would life be in the future with digitization, without digitization? Why am I really doing it? What problem am I trying to solve? What need am I trying to meet? Don't try to do it for the sake of doing it because it's
Right.
the new oil or the new electricity. I think you really have to think about it in the context of your own industry, in the context of your own company, and then figure out how it's going to make sense. I don't
Right.
want to get into a long-winded answer, but that's kind of my few opening thoughts to your question as well. But we'll see how the discussion goes, and we need to get
Sure. Sure.
more detail. We will.
Sure. Thank you very much for that, Suchet. I think there were already some very interesting, directions in which I could sort of weave from what you've just said. But before I get there, Raj, as a tech visionary, and you've been at it for a while now as well, right? And as Ram, Professor Ram also said, you're somebody that is a practitioner that sort of goes on the ground and actually helps organizations get there, right? And coming from your practice, coming from your vision, do you think clients and the boards behind those clients of these large legacy industries, while they speak, digital transformation and everything, but do they really put their money where the mouth is? Is there does that happen, or is there resistance besides despite of all the nice talks?
Right, Ravi, and I'll take you through a little journey of this last 6, 7 years. Many companies were embarked, as you said, the CEOs and the board, as especially large enterprises, have decided this is the way to go. And they have the deep pockets, so they start spending a lot of money. They call this more transformation than as a business. And in that process, they delegated a lot to their technology folks. And so they took the big bang approach. I just give you one example. One of big automotive companies spent close to $1 billion in building the data lakes of the information. Great, lot of information. But unfortunately, business says we can't make decisions based on this data because business was not involved in really coming together and iterating and making sure this is the right data, right information, right intelligence, they can make the decisions. And then like that, we came across many, many companies, pharmaceutical companies, and big retailers and spend CPG companies, big banks, they spend a lot of money. I mean, they got some traction. I'm not saying they didn't, but unfortunately, it was not the magnitude. So in the meantime, the mid-sized companies are really confused, and they said, "Oh, this is too expensive. It takes too long, and whether how effective it is for me, and I can't afford to do this." And so in that process, they did some experiments here and there, but they never gotten anywhere big time. But the COVID really hit the mid-sized companies big. Suchit can talk about that in terms of the demand and the supply. We were working with the company in New Jersey, the pharmaceutical company, big manufacturers, very successful. I mean, in the sense, more mid-size, and but they have so much demand in the COVID vaccination. At the same time, there are a lot of supply chain issues around the world because they're manufacturing in India, China, everywhere. And so it was even they didn't even have some basic information of how much cash they have in a day, so that they can really see where they can more investment they can do. So basically what it is, you have not connected these companies, especially mid-sized companies, not having digitized reasonably well, and so that you can connect the information, and they're all sitting in spreadsheets or paper all over the place. Just the basic insurance documents, basic the bank statements. A lot of these things are things you needed, right? So most of these mid-sized companies are really now slowly realizing it is, as you said, Ram said, do or die, and it is really important to do this.
Right.
And I think the way I characterize this, the CEO and the board has to think this is a business. This is not transformation. This is a digital business is by itself. It has a tremendous potential to expand. So your current business are so complex, including technologies are so complex. How do you simplify the process? How do you connect everybody? How do you create a single source of truth in the business? So what the demand is, what the supply chain, manufacturing, and overall financial aspects of all those things has to be connected as a single source of truth. The first time I ever seen a CEO, Suchit, when I talked to him, he said the first thing he said, I don't want to do it in my complex business. I want to do outside of it. It has to be true, agile, and the ability to see the information day to day across the company. I think that's the kind of attitude we really need from the CEO. Has to take the ownership, because this is not something we had to bring the entire organization. It doesn't have to be very lengthy. You can define what business outcomes you're looking to priority basis, then can accomplish very quickly, as Ram said, within a short time. Focusing on that, bringing the right set of data together, all wherever it exists, doesn't matter. In this process, you digitize and also simplify. We don't call it anymore process. It's the workflow, simple workflow for your operations, but also connecting with the consumers aspect of it and your customers, your supply chain. And so you had to create a very simplified business approach, and most important, simplified technology. So without disrupting the current business, you can take the information, leverage all the stuff you have already, but create a simple, what we call business digital platform, which is really bring the true agile and business and technology working together, engineering, very true real-time basis, so that they can clearly see, iterate, collaborate. Is this the right information? What I need to do to fix this, so that I can make the decision? Then apply the algorithms, which are machine learning, and then will be very effective, because as Ram said, there's a lot of available. But today, people just throwing, even Watson, Google's, they throw a lot of stuff. So a specific industry, specific outcome, unless you have the right data, you're not going to really do any good.
It's very interesting.
So we just came across one of the clothing company. That's exactly what happened. They couldn't, Watson or Google were not able to really connect all these natural language so that they can give the real intelligence, those kind of things. So it's very important to make sure you have the right information. It's not complex. It's all it is a collaboration and iterating. So digital business is by itself. So the discipline and culture here is very extremely important, both the technology side and the business side, so that you simplify. If you can't simplify, don't do that business because it's too complex. And that's where we view it and help this. But slowly companies are realizing. Recently, big pharma company, we're helping them. The CEO put down, saying the business and technology, and it has to be a separate platform, which is truly digital and the agile aspects of it. Now even it's getting very complex in terms of with the cybersecurity and all this. Now 5G is coming in, all these things. Unless you have a well-planned platform from the beginning, idea to all the way to connecting to 5G network. Make sure you have a properly all the security framework is there. It's an ingredient to everything you do. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that, Raj. I mean, there again, a couple of very interesting inputs that I took from that one, and that one sort of leads me to a question, which I would perhaps like to pose again to Professor Ram. When we talk about you spoke about so many aspects of what you said should not really be called transformation, but more of digital business. But for organizations that are rooted in legacy modes and ways of doing business, could it be overwhelming, Professor Ram, when they sort of hear so much? And more importantly, more than overwhelming, what I want to understand is what would your advice be to them? Would you sort of suggest to them they should go about things in incremental way, or do you think they should sort of go big bang, do the the whole transformative way? What are your views on it, Professor Ram?
It's a central question. And first thing I want to bring out, one side I said digitize or die. Now turn it around. Digitize or reach new heights. So the whole game began in 1995. And in that game, somebody came from nothing, took one product that called books in Amazon, and now more than $1 trillion market value. They built one big base at a time. They did not build the whole digital engine in one shot, nor did Alibaba,
Right.
nor did Google, none of them. People need to know how many people started Microsoft? 2. How many started in Uber? 3. How many in Google? 3. How many in Amazon? 2. You don't have to be overwhelmed. Second point, it's not too late in the legacy companies if those big giants have not entered. Big giants have entered now into pharmacy. They have entered into healthcare. They have already have a huge impact on retailing. So I want you to know Walmart is not late. They now fix the front end. Its market value is now doubled since they began to do this. Its market is growing, its image is growing. And now they're moving into clinics. They're going to move into insurance. So I want the people to know it's not defensive. It's go on the offensive that will create a huge market value. It's not automation to replace something and be productivity. Now I come to your point. Yes, you do base by base. And the first one and the most important, connect with the customer. Engage the customer. Treat each customer individually. It is not expensive to do. People like Raj can do that in less than 10, 12, 15 weeks. Your data is spread all over the place. It's an unstructured form. People will come and tell you it cost you $1 zillion to homogenize the data. Now, people like Raj and these business digital platform drivers, and it's got some great platforms, by the way, that you can put it in almost like a play, you plug and play. No overwhelming. So I have a number of companies in India now. They are under $100 million in sales. We're putting them in. Now they can see that. And they really understand it is building the business for the future. So you do not do the whole shebang. None of the legacy companies who trying to do whole shebang, they are the ones who are going bankrupt.
Mm.
I know that for sure. So you go with a systematic way, start with the customer, and then start with the supply chain, because if you don't have the flow, you're not going to win. And so you do project by project and get your data, as Raj said, single source of truth. Without that, you don't make decisions, right? People don't trust the decision. If you have single source, you have the dashboard, your speed of decision making is going to increase.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for those inputs. So, Suchet, very logically, I think in Professor's words, there is something that I can sort of, push down towards you and ask you, when you really get down to digitization, right? I guess, and kindly pardon me if I'm being presumptuous here. I guess that it boils down to how well digitization is executed for you. While on one hand, Raj gave us examples of how um, sometimes it can sort of sound very overwhelming to the CEO and the board if they're sort of starting from ground zero and then they hear so much. And on the other hand, Professor Ram has also very clearly outlined how it can actually be achieved in a minimum cost and minimum time kind of a thing, right? So, as somebody who's really embarked on this journey of digitization, what is your advice to the other captains of similar industry, legacy industry like yours? What would you tell them as somebody who's at the forefront of having it executed for yourself?
So the first thing, Ravi, is that one, don't go bankrupt doing it. Bankrupt in the sense it's just not about the money. It's about the amount of attention that go into trying to do something huge, right? It can just consume the senior management bandwidth and take their focus away from the core strength of the business. And you can never let that happen. So one, don't go bankrupt trying to do it. It's you're not trying to make a fashion statement. You're trying to create value in the business. You're trying to solve a need of the business and solve a need of the customer. So you got to take a very, very pragmatic approach to it. I mean, the way we do it is simply do a pilot to begin with. Pick an area which is a problem, pick an area which is a pain area in the business. For manufacturing companies such as us spread across multiple plants, and we are in the healthcare industry, so there's always changing forecasts, changing
Right.
consumptions from customers. We were hit with COVID, and the entire prescription patterns changed because now people were not going up. There was lockdown, so typical prescriptions that got filled out in pharmacies changed. So there was a change in demand, therefore change in manufacturing and a change in supply chain. Correct. So how do you deal with that? So and when that happens, there's a huge problem of inventory. So the way we decide to do it is let's take inventory as an issue and
Right.
do a pilot and completely digitize it and see what the analytics are telling us. How is digital transformation? What story is it telling us? What insight is it giving us about the market's consumption patterns? And how can we adapt to that change? How do we change our manufacturing schedules, our procurement patterns so that we can make faster decisions? We can be more agile and more responsive. So I think it's good to start with an area which is bothering you, which can impact the business, because then everybody starts to see value. And when you're successful in one project in one area with digitization, it becomes easy to enroll. And Raj was talking about culture, and that is the most important part. If you don't have the right culture and the commitment from the top, you can forget about it. It's not going to go across rest of the organization. So pick a small project, pick something which is meaningful, pick either an important need that you want to solve for or an important pain area within the business. Make a cross-functional team, right? And don't pick people who are occupied only 50% of the time and put them in the cross-functional team. Pick the best performers. Pick the people with the high energy. Pick people who want to make a difference. Make sure that they get educated, they get the right resources, they send the right signals across the organization. And most importantly, when you are digitizing, it's the data is telling you a story, right? It's data storytelling, so to speak.
Absolutely.
And it's telling you the right story. So the integrity of the data is important. More often than not, and Newlands made this mistake, is without getting the process right, we want to digitize a process. What I mean to say is that if you don't have, Raj, what's the term that you used? The single source of data, is that what you call it?
Yes.
Single source of truth.
Yeah,
Single source of truth. I like that much more. So I think
yeah,
that's important. Get that single source of truth, get the data integrity, make sure you have a process, like say for inventory, right? Then you digitize it. It makes absolute sense. Unfortunately, a lot of people try to digitize without getting their basics right. They don't have the right team. They don't have the single source of truth. Data is in islands. They don't have the culture. If you don't get the basics right, then it is bound to be a failure. So I think
I think
it,
there's some wonderful
sure.
insights in there from you, Suchet. Really, I mean, I really like the fact that you've reinforced what Professor just told us, that you digitize or die. There's no doubt about it. But coming from there, how you pick and choose is very important. You make incremental changes, and from what I hear from you, what is very important is again not making those incremental changes just for the heck of making those incremental changes, but to identify core areas which are going to have real impact, meaningful impact on your business. Identify the right set of people in your organization, put them behind it. So you, in that sense, you sort of behind that small project, you throw the whole line and sinker at it, and then sort of go for it.
And Raj, it has to make things simple. It cannot make things more complex. So it has to
I think
take a
that's what Raj
complex,
also was. Yes,
correct.
yes.
You have to take a complex business such as pharmaceuticals, which is the second most regulated industry in the world. We generate about 3,000 documents a day. So you have to use this technology to make it simpler, easy to understand, and faster decision making.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm very cognizant of the fact that we're sort of running short of time, and we have a question from the audience. So let me first pose that, and then come back to any remainder question and time that I might have. So we have Mohan from the audience who wants to ask, how do you balance the security needs with digitization, especially in a manufacturing setup, where a ransomware attack on a production line can result in millions of dollars in losses? Interestingly, I think I would like to pose this to Raj, perhaps. And interestingly, while my question was not as detailed and as specific as this, but I did want to sort of ask you that how in the process of digitization, I'm sure there are risks. How do you really mitigate it? But I think here's a
Yeah.
very specific, clear question.
Yeah, it's a very important question because it is the integral part of the business. As you digitizing and you're creating a lot of complexity of people coming in from different ways, right? You're connecting with all kinds of people, all kinds of devices everywhere. Unless you institute that security policy from the beginning, right from the business idea all the way down to connectivity. Today, especially 5G makes it a lot more complex. And it is not like what 4G security aspects of it. So it is great speed and a lot of opportunities and many ways connecting with the customers. But unfortunately, it is has to be really so. For instance, I just give you recently we got involved with Fox, which is now separated from 20th Century Fox, and so they decided they didn't want to take the old way of doing things. They from the day one, the CTO, CIO decided I'm going to have everything from the beginning, all the way down to the launching the products, including digital products. And so it was all part of the what we call is the design, engineering, DevOps, and the connectivity. All that has to be planned in your digital journey. It is not complex. It's all it is. It's a part of that. As I talked about the culture, everybody right from the business, engineering, manufacturing, everybody is involved. What we call in technology terms, manufacturing is like nothing but DevOps, which is integrated in all aspects of it. The same way, we need to make sure that culture is embedded across. And then it's very hard for the hackers because once you embedded that policy and embedded the whole engineering aspects of it, every step of the things you do. The other thing is we really preach is you really need to take the engineering approach. It's not app development. It's really product. You create the components. Those components can really help you to leverage across. When there is a problem, security problem, you can clearly point out to what component is making that happen so that you can fix these things. So these are the kind of things really important, simplified. That's the reason it's the CEO level to really put these framework and the culture and the discipline, picking the right people together. Doesn't need much, Then at the same time, your business, all business is behind it, coming together, making it happen without disrupting the current business. Because that's the first thing can happen is you start pulling the people from current business. They already working 14, 15 hours a day. They don't have really time to think through these things and do it. And so it's very important you have some dedicated resource from the business. Doesn't have to, again, a lot of time. It is a focus on a particular area. Like, for instance, demand management. First, get the demand management. We have various sources coming in. How do you get all that single source of truth there? Then do the supply chain at the same time. Then build a bridge, what Ram calls, build a bridge between the two to can also make effective your manufacturing based on this thing. So you can, any new business models, you can fine tune it very quickly and configure very quickly to really launch into the market. That's why there's unlimited possibilities in the digital business if you do it right.
So Raj, if I can just add a point to what you said, Ravi, back to that question, is don't buy $1,000 bicycle and buy a $5 lock. Correct. So if you're going to invest $1,000 in a bicycle, invest $50 in a lock. So coming back to that question asked by Mohan, a lot of times you spend a lot of time investing in data, but we spend very less money on data security. And you can't make that mistake. You have to protect your investment with a suitable investment in protecting as well. So as long as you're following that rule, you have the right vendor and you're picking the right tool, correct? You don't want to use a shotgun to lean on. So don't pick a wrong tool for the job. So pick the right tool, invest that money, you'll be fine. That's the only additional perspective.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks so much. I hope, Mohan, that answers your question. We just have about a couple of minutes, and I would probably like to sort of, go back to Professor Ram and ask him a sort of, question that's been swirling on my mind based on the many inputs that came through from you, Suchet, and from Raj. Professor, I mean, while I understand, while we've discussed that it's important for organizations to pick and choose a key area, focus on it, and make that incremental change and move on. But in today's day and age, how does a CEO really prioritize which is his key area? I mean, if you sort of pick up the 4 Ps, the people, process, projects, each one of them is a critical area. So where and how, what would your advice be to hone in? How does he hone in on that specific area and pick that for a change?
Okay. So the key, Suchet mentioned and Raj mentioned, and we start first with the pain point. In most of these companies, there has been a problem of cash. And when you don't have cash, it's the beginning of the death. So start where the pain point of the cash is. Unless you solve the cash problem, you can't do anything. See where digitization can help you on the cash. For example, the example I gave you about New Delhi, that they did not connect with the customer, inventory did not move, it trapped the cash. So that got relieved. Or forecasting demand, or Raj mentioned about inventories. But the critical question is, what is your pain point that need to be dealt with first? Design that project carefully, discreetly, so it can be done and you see results. And you get outside people to look at it or inside people, but don't build an army. You don't need it. And that's what you got to watch here. And so I would say start there. And the CEO himself or herself must engage in it. Why? There is no single company, none, whose business model will not change if you put the digitization. And that's where they need to focus and say, this is our pain point. This is what we're going to have more growth, higher margin, better cash, better customer service. and then say, how do we get the right tool, right information, right developer of the platforms? Go clearly that these are commoditized tools today.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much for your inputs, gentlemen. I think we are bang on time. What I'd like to sort of do is, summarize what my learnings were from what I heard from all of you. First was, of course, digitize or die. I think that's as clear as it gets. Second, I think, and then this, I'd like to reorder my point and say that from Professor's last answer, second would be to pick that pain point which is probably hurting you the most right now, not to postpone that pain point. And third, to make those changes in a meaningful way, incremental it may be, but make it in a meaningful way. As Suchet, you mentioned in response to Mohan's question as well, that you don't buy $1,000 bicycle and a $5 lock. So invest in the right tools, but pick them carefully. Don't go bankrupt doing it. And when you do it, make sure that every piece of the puzzle is well locked and is not up for bankruptcy, even though you went the whole hog. So that's my learning from our 40-minute discussion, gentlemen. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you very much. It's really been a pleasure talking to all of you.
Thank you.
Excellent
Thanks.
summary.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Excellent
Ravi.
summary.